Before week 6 begins, make sure you watch this video because this is the most important week in the trade market this year. At the wide receiver position specifically, there are a ton of buy low options right now that you can get for practically nothing. And in this video, we'll be talking about these 7 wide receivers you should be targeting in trades before week 6 begins. And we'll start with Khalil Shakir of the Buffalo Bills, who's one of my favorite trade targets right now that I'm trying to get in basically every league that I can. And here's the deal. This guy last week, he ended up missing the game with an injury in week 5. It was an ankle injury. He didn't practice all week, so there's also a chance that he misses week 6. He plays on Monday Night Football, so he has another day to get ready. But the point of this is not to trade for him just for specifically this week. Of course, it's not a great matchup against the Jets on Monday night. The point is, for the rest of the season, I want Shakir on my team because I believe he's the #1 pass catcher on the Bills, including tight end Dalton Kincaid, including the running back James Cook. Because you look at this, Matt Collins is doing absolutely nothing out there. Keon Coleman, in my opinion, is miscasted, a talented player not put in the right role. Curtis Samuel, I don't know if he's still dealing with his injury, but it's really not getting done right now. And MVS, we know what MVS is. He's not really seeing a lot. Khalil Shakir, not only talent-wise, like actually good player-wise, is the best receiver on this team, but the way that they're using him and the way that Josh Allen views him and really leans on him is showing that he's the #1 pass catcher on the Bills. Now, what do I mean by the way that Josh Allen is using him and viewing him? Well, let's just look at this right here. Last week against the Texans, who do have a quality defense, but not like one of the most groundbreaking defenses ever, Josh Allen completed 9 passes. I don't know if you guys saw this. The dude completed 9 passes out of 30 attempts. This reminded me of rookie year Josh Allen, where he couldn't complete anything. The dude literally was completing 1/3 of his passes in this game. Absolutely brutal. I mean, Anthony Richardson would be proud of this performance. Now, Shakir being out wasn't the only reason why Josh Allen struggled in this game, but it definitely wasn't not the reason, if that makes sense, right? It definitely didn't help contribute to the fact that Josh Allen had a bad game because Khalil Shakir has been Josh Allen's security blanket this year, especially when he's under pressure. In week 5, Josh Allen completed 0 of his 13 pass attempts while under pressure. And what do you know? Shakir wasn't out there playing in that game. And despite missing week 5, Khalil Shakir still has led this team with 19 targets. He leads the team with 19 targets, even though he's played in one less game. And the game before that in week 4, he got banged up and had to leave in that game. You're still getting this guy leading the team in targets. He is absolutely dynamic and explosive with not only the ball in his hands, but after the catch as well, which is really nothing that these other Bills wide receivers can kind of claim a fame to. So I think he's the perfect buy low candidate because he's still on a good offense. He has a cheat code quarterback. Josh Allen can make any single throw on the field and can create out of the pocket to extend plays for a guy like Shakir, who is also explosive after the catch and downfield, which we saw oftentimes last year while competing with more competition like Stefon Diggs, who of course is no longer there. So as you can see in my rest of season rankings right here, when you're trying to find a guy who you should trade for, Khalil Shakir is my 104th overall player. Any guy behind him, I would trade for him right now in terms of I would trade away Dontavian Wicks to go get Khalil Shakir. Here's a good one. Kareem Hunt, who probably has like 3 more weeks of being the starting running back in the Chiefs, hasn't looked good. He's performed good, but actually on a per carry basis hasn't looked explosive. Go trade Kareem Hunt right now for Khalil Shakir if you can. I think you get that done in like 95% of your fantasy leagues. And then speaking of Dontavian Wicks, I would go ahead and try and trade for this guy as well because he was the most popular waiver ad of probably the entire season last week. And look, things were looking up for Dontavian Wicks. In week 5 was supposed to be his big 2024 breakout game because Christian Watson was out with an injury, because Romeo Doubs was complaining in practice and not showing up to practice, so the Packers suspended him for a game. And you got Dontavian Wicks coming into a matchup against the Rams, who allow the most receiving yards per play, the best matchup you can have so far this year. Dontavian Wicks was going to go off, right? Oh, no. He didn't. He caught 2 balls for 20 yards. He didn't, gang. He did not go off here. 2 balls, caught 20 yards, 4 fantasy points on 7 targets. He let a lot of people down. And now I'm seeing situations where people are like, should I just drop Dontavian Wicks? Like, what was the point of all this hype? No, do not do that. You should trade for him instead. Because if we look at the overall usage in this game, you can see right here that it's still looking pretty good. He ran a season high 83% of the routes. For the second straight week, he led the team with a 25% target share. This past week led the team. Last week, a 26% target share led the team in that game as well. This is a guy that Jordan Love continues to go to. Even though Dontavian Wicks, once again this past week, had 1, maybe even 2, depending on how you want to classify a drop, and was just not on the same page as Jordan Love, that is going to get going. This is a guy in Wicks who spent most of his preseason in camp playing with the second unit. At times, he would factor into the first unit, but he was the wide receiver 4 on this team. The box score looks bad. It doesn't look sexy at all, but we were literally just a few inches away from a big play in this game multiple times, and honestly right away early. Because this is the first drive of the game right here for the Packers. Dontavian Wicks is where my cursor is at the bottom of the screen. Look at him go over the middle of the field here. They have motion. The Packers always use motion. Wicks crosses the field. He's basically wide open. Jordan Love overthrows him by about 1.5 or 2 feet. That is a 25 to 30 yard gain right off the bat. He only ended the game with 20 yards. So right there, he would add an additional 30 yards. And there was another play in this game deep down the right sideline that was pretty similar. Jordan Love missed a wide open Dontavian Dontavian Wicks. And very quietly, this has been a problem for Jordan Love this year. I know week 1 he was playing on a bad field. I know he's coming back from an injury, but he ranks 28th in clean pocket completion percentage. So when he's not pressured, but he has time to throw, he's 28th right now in completion percentage. So far this season, Jordan Love looks atrocious. Again, I get it that he's coming back from a knee injury, but it's still something that we have to keep in mind. Like, it's not all Dontavian Wicks' fault. And the drops are an issue, but assuming that those don't stick, because they rarely are sticky for a wide receiver, it's usually a mental thing that they get over. Well, if they don't stick, well, Dontavian Wicks is getting open, so those drops are going to become catches and big gains. And as of right now, the latest news we have on Christian Watson doesn't seem like he's playing in week 6. Again, that's as of this recording. Romeo Doubs should return to the starting lineup, but either way, 3 wide receiver sets is what the Packers like to use a lot of, meaning Wicks will be on the field, and I think that he can earn targets at a higher clip than one Romeo Doubs, even if Romeo Doubs is kind of the squeaky wheel narrative, trying to ask for more receptions, targets, and just playing time. So I personally believe that Dontavian Wicks is somebody you should buy low on. If he's somehow still available on your waiver wire, he's not out there in a lot of them, we'll go and pick him up instead, because this week is probably the last week you can buy low on this dude, because he has yet again another great matchup. He's going to go at home here, a 5-point favorite with a nice game and team total, so a good fantasy environment against the Arizona Cardinals, who allow the 5th most receiving yards per play. This is the week that Dontavian Wicks bounces back, and if you were somebody who's like, oh, he stunk last week, he's going on my bench, I think he's going to burn you. Now, in terms of who I would trade for Dontavian Wicks, I think Rico Dotto 1-for-1 makes sense. If you can get a Nick Chubb deal, if people are excited for Nick Chubb, perfect time to sell him away right now, because I think his stock will be the highest right now as there's excitement. The actual Nick Chubb on the field, I don't think people are going to like what they see just in that offense and him coming off of an injury. So Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, again, you can trade here. You can scroll down a little bit more. Jerome Ford, if you can make that work. Tucker Kraft in a deal, if you can make that work. Ty Chandler with Aaron Jones. All these guys is who I would trade right now for Dontavian Wicks. And this tool right here that you're looking at, that tool was my rest of season rankings. It's my trade tool. It's one of the pieces, the many pieces of my fantasy blueprint. Basically, the fantasy blueprint is a tool that I send every single day during the week. My waiver wire tiers and rankings. You also get access to that rest of season rankings, that trade tool you just saw, rankings and projections for the upcoming week, game by game matchup notes, and a whole lot more. How do you get access? You follow these 2 simple steps. But here's the thing. When you sign up through one of our partners, and that's linked in the description below, if you don't make your fantasy playoffs, I'll just refund your one-time payment of $10, making this completely risk-free. What a deal. What an offer. Oh my goodness. But all jokes aside, if you want to join 20,000 other people that currently have access to my fantasy blueprint, you can just scan this QR code that's on the screen right now, or click the link in the description below, whatever's easier for you. And again, when you sign up through one of our 2 partners, it will take you to these pages. You follow the simple steps. Make sure you follow the 3 steps right here, and then you will get the fantasy blueprint risk-free this year for just $10. You don't make your playoffs, you get it right back for whatever reason. No questions asked. Scan that QR code on the screen right now. Smack around your competition with those tools. There you go, beautiful people. Let's keep going. The Bills are now paid. Next man up, we're sticking with the young player theme here with Rome Odunze. The Bears offense, as we honestly predicted last week, got back on track in week 5, because it seems like it's as simple as this. They face the Panthers, who have a bad pass rush. They go off. A couple weeks ago, they faced the Colts, who have a bad pass rush and banged up, exposed in the defensive line. Get it out, man. And what do you know? Caleb Williams is magic yet again. When they face these bad pass rushes, their offensive line, the Bears, which is pretty bad, it's kind of neutralized and there's time to throw. And in this game, the Bears ran a lot of 3 wide receiver sets because they could afford not to have an additional tight end on the field. And what did you get? You got the second best game of the season from a usage standpoint for Rome Odunze. First off, he ran 97% of the routes. That's elite. That's the best he's seen. 21% of the targets is the second best he's seen, but the most that he's seen in a game with Keenan Allen active this year, which I think is pretty important. Now, overall, what did this lead to? Well, we saw the big game out of DJ Moore. It was a revenge spot against the Carolina Panthers, if you will. He turned 8 targets into 100 yards, 2 touchdowns in this one. He finally got going on the season, which didn't leave a lot of meat on the bone for anybody else here when one wide receiver is having such a dominant week. So 6 targets for Rome Odunze. It was a solid performance in real life. 5 catches, 40 yards. He looked good out there. He was running all the routes. They were putting him in advantageous spots to win. Like we've seen Rome Odunze win on the outside deep down the field so far this year multiple times. And this game, it was underneath stuff. It was putting him in motion. Very creative route concepts, and we like to see that they're scheming him into the offense like that. Again, in this game, we saw a lot of 3 wide receiver sets with these guys, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, and Rome Odunze, which means that Shane Waldron, the offensive coordinator, he's starting to change some things up. The first 1, 2, 3 weeks of the season, it was using all these tight ends. It was using Gerald Everett. It was using DeAndre Carter, a special teams 30-plus-year-old wide receiver who doesn't have a ton of juice left at this time in his career. At least Shane Waldron is evolving, and we're getting the good players on the field for 90 to 100% of the snaps. And eventually, these games, when they're on the field a ton, Rome Odunze is going to have that 100-yard, 2-touchdown performance that DJ Moore just had, because I think Odunze, as a top 10 pick in the NFL draft, is just that talented. And I also think the fact that the Bears just steamrolled the Panthers in this one, 36-10, also led to in the second half, they didn't have to do much. The Bears put up 27 points in the first half. It was 27-7 at halftime. Second half, the Bears weren't forced to throw the ball all that much. Rome Odunze, who had a nice first half, didn't really translate to the second half because the Bears, again, were running the ball more. We're not really forced to throw downfield. But as I mentioned earlier, I like the usage for Rome Odunze in this game. You'll see Rome Odunze at the bottom of the screen right here. And let's actually make this bigger for you beautiful people. There you go. You'll see Rome Odunze right here. here at the bottom of the screen. They're going to start. This is early on in the game. In the first drive of the game, they're going to start by putting him in motion into the slot, actually, and he comes across the field, and check out what happens. You get a nice gain. So he comes in motion, multiple guys in motion there, moves into the slot very subtly. You can see a kill here, a change by Caleb Williams, and what you're going to get out of this is Rome Odunze, again, right here down, bottom of the field, play action pass, so high quality offense pass right there, play action. Odunze comes in motion, keeps his balance, picks up 12, 13 yards. That doesn't seem like anything crazy. That's not something we were seeing out of Shane Waldron the first 4 weeks of the season with Odunze. He was being lined up on the outside and told to run deep most of the time. But that type of play is encouraging. Not only did you get motion, you got play action, and play action targets in fantasy are worth about 30 to 40% more. There's just so much more efficiency when you're using play action. So that's encouraging, and just look at this upcoming schedule. It doesn't get much better than this. At home against the Jaguars this week. This is the week to trade for Odunze before he faces a Jaguars team that right now ranks bottom 5 in passing yards per play allowed. You get the Commanders, who are bottom 10 defense. You get the Cardinals, who allow the 5th most passing yards per play we talked about earlier. You can keep scrolling here. A matchup against the Bears at home is beneficial. Honestly, these next 3 and 4 to the next 5, and even the Patriots aren't too scary, are great matchups for Rome Odunze and this Bears team and Caleb Williams. And then you have to keep in mind that Caleb Williams has only played 5 NFL games. Rome Odunze has only played 5 NFL games. Keenan Allen just joined this team. It's a new offensive coordinator. It's a new offense gelling together. They're only going to get better as the season goes on. So right now for me, Rome Odunze is my 78th overall player, meaning any guy below him. Ramondre Stevenson off a big week. I think I would do that trade definitely in a heartbeat. Chuba Hubbard off a big week, and with Jonathan Brooks lurking in the background, I would do that trade in a heartbeat. Chase Brown off of a couple of nice games where he scored touchdowns. Trade these guys right now for Rome Odunze. Now this next guy, he's not going to be the young first, second year players that we've been talking about so far in this video. He's going to be an older veteran, but I do think there's some value in him. And before you go crazy, yes, I think DeAndre Hopkins is worth trading for coming out of his bye week for a couple of reasons. First off, he desperately needed his bye week. So far this season, if we pull up Fantasy Life's data right here, look at his route participation. Week 1 was extremely limited by his knee injury, 24% of the snaps. Then 51%, 50. And in week 4, before the bye, he saw a season high 57% of the routes. Now he's not out there 100% of the time, 70, 80% like he usually is, because he's dealing with a knee injury that's been bothering him for the past 1 to 2 months. But the encouraging part here, if we pull back up Fantasy Life's data, is look at his last 2 games. Despite only being out there for about 50% of the routes, he's earned a team high 21% target share in week 3 against the Packers, and then in week 4, a team high 24% target share. So over the last 2 games, it's not Calvin Ridley leading this team in wide receiver usage. It's DeAndre Hopkins, even though he's only out there for half the plays. The thought process now is he comes back from the bye week healthier and he starts playing more. And I honestly don't think any other people are looking at this. Nobody in your league, maybe nobody in fantasy football at all, because this is still a talented player. I mean, let's just look at it. His stats are skewed on the year. Like if you look at his season stats, they're not going to look good because in week 1 he was limited and only got 1 point. In week 2 he was still limited and only got 1 point. Then we saw more route participation, and in week 3 against the Packers puts up 19 fantasy points. This past week, just 5 fantasy points, but very quietly saw his most routes and snaps on the entire season. He's trending up in the right direction. You can see right here, if we just go to this game against the Packers, in a tough matchup against Jair Alexander in that game, 7 targets, 6 catches, 73 yards, and a touchdown. And yes, I know Jair for the Packers was also on Calvin Ridley for 50% of the game or so, but Hopkins twice in that game beat Jair Alexander, at least twice that I can find. But when people look at the game logs, they'll see, oh, his last game was just 5 fantasy points, and then he went on the bye week for me. This guy's doing absolutely nothing for me. Oh, he's old, he's DeAndre Hopkins, all this. They won't be seeing the trend that he's starting to play more and earning the majority of the targets on the team the last 2 games. And fellas, Hopkins is coming back into the perfect matchup. Not only does he get to stay in his home, at home, and sleep in his own bed in Tennessee, he gets to face the Colts. The Colts, people, the Colts who are currently allowing 3 straight games of 100-yard wide receivers. Man, oh man, remember last week, Brian Thomas, my bold prediction on Yahoo was that he would go for 130 or more yards. He got close, 5 catches, 122, 26 fantasy points, finds the end zone. The week before that was the George Pickens breakout game. George Pickens goes over 100 yards, 110 yards in this game against the Colts. If you remember the week before that, it was the Rome Odunze first ever 100-yard career game as a rookie. Everybody is dominating this Colts team. In fact, #1 outside wide receivers this year against the Colts are averaging 105 yards per game. And Hopkins fits that description as an outside #1 receiver. I know Ridley is there. Ridley moves into the slot at times. In general, Hopkins is going to primarily stay on the outside for 90-ish% of his snaps. And beautiful people, here's the thing. Hopkins is my 120th rest of season player. I'm not trying to tell you that he's the best player in the NFL, but you can get him so cheap right now. Go trade Juwan Jennings right now for Hopkins. Everybody will do that. They still think Juwan Jennings is great, even though Ayuk just had his breakout game and Debo now looks healthy and Kittle looks healthy and McCaffrey could be coming back in a month or 2. Go trade somebody like, oh, I don't know, Wan'Dale Robinson is the perfect trade away player. Malik Neighbors is now back. Wan'Dale Robinson earning 10 plus targets a game is not really going to be valuable when he's getting 5 yards per target. So I know Hopkins isn't the sexy play, but I do think once he's out there, he can go back to being a #1 wide receiver for this team and maybe have some top 20 finishes. Next up, this one's pretty simple, but Deontay Johnson entered the week with an injury for the Panthers, and then he kind of fell back down to earth the entire Panthers offense did because they faced the Chicago Bears. The Chicago Bears, who have a top 5 defense against the pass this year and a top 5 pass rush and can get to the quarterback. Now, this led to a game where, again, Deontay played through injured in this one, and he only had 6 fantasy points. He had just 3 catches for 23 yards, had a couple of carries for 6 yards in this one. And also, we have to keep in mind that in this game, it was a blowout. It was a blowout. Oh my God, I'm over here. Hey, how are you? It was a blowout in this game. It was a blowout, so Diontae Johnson came off the field in the second half because he was already dealing with an injury, so that kind of cut into his playing time as well. And that's kind of reflected in his usage. You can see he played 76% of the routes in this game. He ran 76% of the routes. That was the lowest on the season so far for him because he came into the game with an injury and got pulled. He saw 18% of the targets, the lowest on the season that he's seen basically this entire year because he came with an injury and got pulled. And I think it's worth pointing out that Xavier Legette left this game early, had just 1 catch for 8 yards, was injured. Adam Thielen is still on IR. He's not available for the team, and Diontae Johnson came into the game banged up. So you're looking at this with really not having your team at full strength, and here's the big thing. You're facing a good Chicago Bears defense. They don't have to worry about Thielen. They don't have to worry about Legette. They put their attention on a hobbled Diontae Johnson, and that's the performance that you get, 5 fantasy points. But as of right now, there's no concerns about Deontay's week 6 status, and Xavier Legette said he's going to play in week 6 as well, so they should be back to almost full strength. And it's going to be a good matchup at home for these Carolina Panthers against a division rival in the Atlanta Falcons. We just saw this past week the Falcons allowed a big day to Mike Evans on Thursday Night Football. 3 touchdowns in the first half alone to Baker Mayfield. And on the season, they're currently allowing the 6th most receiving yards per play. This Atlanta Falcons defense, I think Deontay has a big bounce back week. As of right now, according to my rest of season rankings tool, which again, you can get linked down below, 20,000 other people, join the Fantasy Blueprint, come join the community. You'll also get Discord access. You can talk to me, ask me questions in there as well, and chat with the community. So you can see right here, Deontay's my number 61 overall player the rest of the season, meaning these guys below him definitely immediately would trade Travis Etienne away for him. Definitely immediately would trade guys like Michael Pittman. Brian Robinson is one I think you can actually get done coming off of his 2 touchdown performance. I would trade these guys right now to go get Diontae Johnson. Now, the next man I want to talk about is Davante Adams, who is currently dealing with some sort of mixture of a hamstring injury and trade rumors that are going on. And this is a guy that currently is putting up 0 points in the fantasy managers lineups who rostered him and spent most likely a second round pick on him. Getting 0 points, they're probably starting to get stressed out and need somebody to actually be playing in their lineup. So if in your league, the league manager who has Davante is like 1-4 or 2-3, now's the perfect time to strike because they need a win. They can't have this second round pick putting up no production for them another week. And look, I get it that Davante is older. He's almost 32 years old, as you can see right here on Player Profiler, and he's dealing with a hamstring injury, which who knows if this is actually real or if it's just a tactic to get traded, but he's already missed 2 weeks. He should be back in like maybe a week, maybe even this week since he's an older receiver. It could take longer coming off of the hamstring injury, but if you see my friend SportsMD Analysis on Twitter right here says, on average, hamstrings are 2 weeks. Data favors him slightly playing in week 6, TDE if he plays before the trade. So as of right now, Davante Adams should be, it's not like a moderate or severe hamstring strain. It seems pretty mild, a 2-week thing here. So it looks like you're going to be getting, Davante Adams returning this week if he's good to go. But there's been some rumors. I saw there's Kay Adams on Twitter said she was supposed to interviewing him and he had to cancel it. So maybe there's some stuff going on right now with Adams. As of this recording, and this is kind of the nature of the beast in the industry that I play in, I have to record these the night before, so maybe the news will already come out by then. So if he comes out and he's on one of these teams, great. The whole point that I'm trying to say here, Davante Adams, teams interested in the Jets, the Saints, those are his former quarterbacks in Rodgers and Derek Carr. The Steelers, there's some rumors about the Washington Commanders now that they want to go all in since Jaden Daniels looks like the real deal. Any of those teams, even the Pittsburgh Steelers, who don't have the most exciting offense in terms of passing offense, any of these teams he goes to, I believe are an upgrade over what you currently have in Las Vegas with the team that's falling apart right now under Antonio Pierce with 2 terrible quarterbacks. And it's not even like Davante Adams is playing bad this year. So far across 3 games, he's earning a 25% target share. If that held up the rest of the season, it would be easily top 20, borderline top 10 in the NFL. And this already includes multiple games this season, if we pull it up, of 9 targets. We'll scroll over here. You have a 9 target performance right here last time out, a 12 target performance. In these 3 games, he's already posted a 26-point finish, a top 5 finish. Like, I know he's approaching 26, or no, he's approaching 32. I think he wishes he was approaching 26 in his prime with the Packers. He's approaching 32 years old. That's completely fine. He still can get it done. As of right now, for me, Davante Adams is right here, my number 27 player rest of season. So if we scroll down a little bit, this might seem crazy to some of you, but DJ Moore, off of his massive game, I'm flipping him right now for Davante Adams. Jordan Mason, who I love right now, but McCaffrey could be coming back in 5 or 6 weeks. I'm flipping Davante Adams, who you get for the rest of the season for these dudes, especially DJ Moore if you can get that 1-for-1 deal done. Now, before we target this next wide receiver who's had an up and down season, but I think right now is the perfect time to buy low. Almost 70% of you are not subscribed to my YouTube channel. Oh my goodness, it's time for, hey, roll your shoulders back. The gentleman's agreement. We shake on it right here. You made it to this point in the video, so you find the video helpful, entertaining, engaging, whatever it might be. The way to pay it back is just hit the subscribe button. I make this content. I spend on each video 6-7 hours total between researching, editing, getting it up, recording, all that, just for you beautiful people. So if all you can do, gentleman's agreement, is hit the subscribe button. It really goes a long way to allow me to continue to make this content for you. So there you go. Appreciate it a ton. Now, that guy who's been having an up and down season that I touched on is Amari Cooper, who was another frustrating day this past week for Amari, where he has 4 catches for 60 yards, not the worst game ever, but he was facing a Washington Commanders defense that you should be able to pick apart. And the big thing here was he was getting open often. He had 10 targets in this game, but the problem was his quarterback just stunk. His quarterback couldn't complete 50% of the passes thrown your number 1 wide receiver's way because Deshaun Watson just stunk. Let's look at it right here. You can see, according to Fantasy Life, 50% of the targets, so he had 10 targets, so 5 of them in this game, 50% of them were catchable. This catch targets means catchable targets, meaning the other 50% weren't even catchable, which means that even though he earned a target, it was well over his head, it was well behind him, it was not even pointless to get the target. Amari Cooper was doing all the work and getting none of the reward because Deshaun Watson stinks. Man, I'm getting heated up, but look how much Deshaun Watson stinks. After a game where he actually looked decent in week 4 relative to how he's been looking, he had one of the worst games of his entire career. Completes 15 of 28 passes, so barely 50% of his passes, for just 125 yards, averaging 4 yards per attempt. This isn't going to get it done. Like Amari Cooper in this game, if we pull it up on Fantasy Life, got a 38% target share, a season high, one of the highest of Amari Cooper's career in terms of earning targets compared to the other players on his team, and it didn't even matter because Deshaun Watson stinks. So now we're at a point in the season where Amari Cooper very quietly ranks 3rd in the NFL in targets. He's averaging 9.3 targets per game. The guy has had drops this year, I get it. Deshaun Watson has looked terrible. I think that's the more pressing issue here. But Amari Cooper is still getting open. He's getting open at the 3rd highest rate in the league earning targets, but only 48% of his targets this year have been catchable. More than 50% of them on the entire season are not catchable because, say it with me, everybody, say it with me in the comment section, Deshaun Watson stinks. This man is a terrible quarterback. He's a terrible real life person. Deshaun Watson, it's about time, despite all the money that they pay this man, to go to Jameis Winston. Because you know what Jameis Winston doesn't do? He doesn't stink. For fantasy football, he elevates the players. He came in for the Saints years back. He elevated the players. We know what he did with the Bucks. He elevated the players. Even though he threw 30 interceptions, that's fine. Throw for 5,000 yards. We'll take the fantasy points. So the reason why I want you to trade for Amari Cooper is because he's earning targets right now. He has absolutely no competition. I trust in his coach, Kevin Stefanski. I think this offensive line will get healthy in a few weeks when they get guys back from IR. And I think Deshaun Watson is 1 week away from getting benched. Getting Jameis Winston will be an upgrade for Amari Cooper. Trade for Amari if you still can. Now the question becomes, who do you trade for Amari? He's my number 67 overall player rest of season. If Jameis Winston was named the starter tomorrow, Amari would jump into borderline a top 50 player for me. I think you can trade Tony Pollard coming out of the bye off a nice week. Brian Robinson, a running back at a different position than wide receiver, coming off of a 2-touchdown game. These are the guys. Ramondre Stevenson would be perfect. He's a guy that I don't think has a lot of value rest of season overall, but I do think that that's somebody you can trade 1-for-1 for Amari. Now this next man up, you can probably add in most of your leagues. Heading into this week, he was available in over 90% of leagues, but he was the number 1 waiver target this past week, so you might actually have to trade for him in your competitive leagues, and that's Juju Smith-Schuster. Juju Smith-Schuster, this is a guy that, look, I just picked up in a lot of leagues. I think you could have spent up to 20, 25, even 30% in competitive leagues, your fab budget. I spent 24 as the highest number, $24 on Juju, and I think that's worthy of spending. Because let's just look at what happened in week 5. The Chiefs go into a bye week, by the way, so he will be on your bench for week 6, but in week 5, you get Juju Smith-Schuster seeing 8 targets, 7 receptions. He ran the 3rd most routes on this team, only behind Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy, which is what you would expect, but Juju went right into the Rashee Rice role. And I was going into this saying, like, okay, I think Juju Smith-Schuster, his size, the way that he plays, how he played with the Steelers, he kind of has that Rashee Rice element. Out of the slot, can win after the catch. But I was coming into this video thinking I'd say, yeah, but he's just not as explosive as Rashee Rice. But if you watched in week 5, he looked just as explosive as Rashee Rice. Juju Smith-Schuster went out there and after the catch was putting on a clinic on his way to a 130-yard performance. And I know he has some knee issues that he's been dealing with the last couple of seasons. We haven't really gotten an update on if those are still lingering, the chronic issues with his knee, but he's still just 27 years old. It's not like this is 31, 32-year-old Juju Smith-Schuster popping off for a game. Like, I'm not expecting him to have 130 yards per game ever again this season. He's only done it that time, the first time since 2018, so obviously this is not something that'll be consistent, but he did show burst. He ranked 2nd in the NFL last week in yards after the catch, only behind the elite Jamar Chase. 2nd in the NFL in yards after the catch with 81 yards after the catch. This is the exact role Rashee Rice was in. Catch the 5 to 15 yard targets, really the 5 to 10 yard targets, and work after the catch. Juju Smith-Schuster replaced him literally 1-for-1, so why can't we think that they're going to lean on that going into the bye week, work on it some more with Juju coming out of the bye week? He's now your number 1 receiver behind Kelce. And what makes it even more encouraging is coming out of the bye week, he gets a matchup against the 49ers, then the Raiders, then the Bucks. We scroll down, the Broncos is a tough matchup, but the Bills and the Panthers. 5 out of these 6 matchups, including the 49ers, are against bottom half of the league secondaries that allow top half of the league yards per receiving play. So these are beneficial spots for Juju. Not expecting a 130-yard performance again, but why can't we get these 5 catch, 60-yard performances with a touchdown here and there sprinkled in? I think that's somebody to trade for with upside attached to this Patrick Mahomes offense. And I also think another player you should trade for who heading into this week is available in 60% of waiver wires. Now it's probably closer to 50%. So if he's not available there, is Josh Downs, because Josh Downs of the Indianapolis Colts returned in week 3. And since then, every week he's led this team in target share. Week 3, 29% from Anthony Richardson. Week 4, 33% from Anthony Richardson and Joe Flacco. Week 5, 27% from Joe Flacco. So with multiple different quarterbacks, he's led this team ahead of Michael Pittman, which is what we heard in training camp, that, oh my goodness, Josh Downs is the number 1 receiver on this team. That's what it's looking like. And now it's coming to fruition. I'm gonna be honest with you, fruition sounds like a weird word. I don't even know if I used it right there, but let's keep moving. Downs is coming off of another nice game where he saw a season high 12 targets this past week with Joe Flacco, took advantage of a great matchup against the Jaguars, and put up 16 fantasy points. So now you're getting back-to-back good games with a combination of mostly Joe Flacco and a couple of drives of Anthony Richardson in there. I think Josh Downs, the way that they're using him is what's most encouraging to me. And I'm going to show you exactly how they've been using him, especially early on in games this past week. Let's start with this first play. This is on the first drive of the game. I think it's the second play of the game for this offense. Josh Downs is going to be in the slot right here, and they're going to put him in motion. He's going to come back out, and he's going to go get a gain. And the whole point is the way that they're using him, especially early on. He's the guy in motion. He's the priority read on this offense. You see what the defense is doing when he goes in motion. An out route for Josh Downs right there, picks up 12 yards, moves the chains 13 yards. Now let's go to this next play. Now I'm even smaller on you beautiful people, but look at this. Josh Downs is in the slot right here. He's got his hand back. Let's watch this route because it's a nice mixture of how they're using him. Not just short into the outside, deep over the middle of the field. A crossing route, deep over the middle of the field. He gets open. He picks up a 20-plus yard explosive gain. Now this is all on the same drive. I want you to watch this next play as well, and this is key. It's on third down, and this is why it's critical. It is a third down on the first drive of the game. Josh Downs once again is coming in motion. They need to pick up this third down to sustain this drive in the red zone. It's a key down, a money down. You go to your best players on third down. Josh Downs comes in motion across the formation. Watch number 1, Josh Downs right here. They're using him. They're prioritizing him right there. Fakes the out route, picks it up in the middle of the field, gets tackled inside the 5-yard line. This is the guy that they're going to, and I want you to be seeing that last play because on a key third down, he was the first read over Michael Pittman, and that has been the story all season long. Look at this right here. According to Fantasy Life, 3rd and 4th down targets. This is Josh Downs this season. 2, 5, and 3. That is 10 third and 4th down targets this season for Josh Downs in just 3 games alone. The rest of the Colts wide receivers, all 4 or 5 of them that have seen the field this year, have combined for just 11 third and 4th down targets, and they've played 2 more games than Josh Downs. They're going to Josh Downs because they trust him, and I know what you're saying, but Anthony Richardson is going to come back. That's going to ruin everything. Joe Flacco has been looking so good. Yeah, I think that that's probably the case, but also we haven't really seen it. Anthony Richardson has played in 1 game with Josh Downs this year before getting hurt, and in that game, he targeted Josh Downs 29% of the time. I know Anthony Richardson hasn't been accurate, but if he continues to not be accurate for 3 or 4 more games, then he's going to get benched and Joe Flacco will come back in, which also benefits Josh Downs. So either way here, we're either getting a talented Anthony Richardson who starts to improve and that will really benefit Josh Downs, or we don't, and in a couple of weeks we go back to Joe Flacco, which we've seen the last 2 weeks that has really benefited Josh Downs. So go trade for Josh Downs if you can, and these have been the wide receivers I believe in general you should be trading for before week 6 begins. And hey, if you want to see the running backs that you need to target in trades, not now, but right now, again, before week 6, so you can take advantage of your friends, smack them around, win your league, well, be sure to check out this video. YouTube thinks you'll like it. I think you'll like it. It could be your favorite video of all time. There you go. Hit that bad boy right there. Peace out, and I'll see you in the next one.